Welcome everyone. GOBC, lipids. We're into 15.6. We're still talking about now steroids. We got into phospholipids, sphingomyelin. Now let's go a little more into what cholesterol is all about. We have this thing called cholesterol. Uh, Cholesterol can be a steroid. It can be a hormone. It can be an activator of cell signaling and messaging, and even can kick off um, transcription and translation and cause new proteins to be formed. We learn about bile salts that's found in our body and used to help clear out our waste materials and things like that. And we have the steroid hormones, which, as I said, are signaling molecules that can cause new proteins to be formed and lots of cool things, hopefully, to happen in our body that keeps us healthy. So here we see what an artery with plaque can be, which is usually LDL is responsible for that. But it's more than just about the foods you eat, so try not to worry too much. Stay in shape. Hopefully, you have good genes and you'll be safe. But let's move forward. Just a side note, nothing to really focus on here for the course. I just added this, but there's good cholesterol, which is HDL. It's called high density lipoprotein. Bad cholesterol called LDL. It's easy to get those two confused, but HDL, high density lipoproteins, is said to help remove cholesterol from the bloodstream and carry it to the liver for excretion if it's not needed. Higher levels of HDL are associated with lower risk of heart disease. LDL, on the other hand, low density lipoproteins, known as bad cholesterol. Lower levels of LDL are considered desirable. So ideal levels of HDL should be around 60 milligrams per deciliter, while LDL should be below 100 milligrams per deciliter for optimal health. Heart health implications are high levels of LDL can lead to plaque buildups in arteries, while HDL can help protect against heart disease. We also learn the things about omega 3 and omega 6 fatty acids play a role in that. So it's quite complicated. I'm no expert in this area, but I do know some things about molecular structures. And so the steroid nucleus, very used to seeing this in small molecules that I would examine. I would do things that had implications in structural activity maps where I'd look at different small molecules. And the steroid nucleus is probably about as big as I would ever get with looking at a small molecule. But uh, we've seen the steroid nucleus with these four rings, and these are some people spend an entire life studying steroids. Many scientists have done this, and there's much more probably to learn. But we have the steroid nucleus here. We have letter designation for each ring, and that's pretty easy. We start from left to right, A, B, C, D. But the numbering gets a little more sophisticated. And you see here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going in a counterclockwise fashion. We continue counterclockwise 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then we jump over to ring C. We skip this carbon, this methyl group, and now we start to go clockwise instead of counterclockwise. We go 11, 12, 13, 14. And then we end up going counterclockwise again, 15, 16, 17. So counterclockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise, and then counterclockwise. Then when we get to the 17 here, we jump to the two methyl groups, 18 and 19. So that's kind of crazy. I don't need you to memorize that. Not for this class. You may if you take another biochem class, but this is a steroid numbering system, so you can identify what carbons you're talking about, because there's the steroid nucleus is a basis for at least dozens of different molecules with different attachments, different methyl groups, different saturation points. And these are not benzyl rings here, right? These are like cyclohexane and cyclopentane. So there's no aromaticity in these rings as of yet, and we can see that will change. Let's move on. So here's cholesterol with all its decorations. You got this hydroxyl group here. That's at carbon number 3, 1, 2, 3. You have a double bond between carbon 5 and 6, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Um, and then we get to 6, and between 5 and 6. So, so that's, or excuse me, counterclockwise, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is carbon 1 here, right? So this is 5 and 6. We get a double bond here. We have a methyl group at carbons 10 and 13. And then we have an alkyl chain at carbon 17, and that's 18 and 19, right? But these carbons here that are attached to the methyl groups are carbons 10 and 13. And these are 18 and 19. And this is carbon 17, which has this long alkyl group. So just to know that it's diverse. There's so many different things that can bond to this nucleus, this steroid nucleus. But this is cholesterol, and this is the big damper. When it gets really hot, cholesterol can help the membranes stick together better. And when it gets really cold, cholesterol can help the membranes be more flexible, even though the temperature has dropped. So cholesterol is like a pH buffer, right? Which is it's sort of carbonic acid is our pH buffer. Cholesterol is our membrane buffer. That's crazy, but they work kind of the same way. Um, uh, Cholesterol in the body, we can get it from meats, milks, and eggs. It can also be synthesized in our liver when it's internally made. We need it for cell membranes. We need it for brain and nerve tissue, for steroid hormones. We need it for vitamin D and to help with our calcium being regulated and implemented properly in our bones and things as such. So this is something that's healthy for a normal artery. This is when things unfortunately get clogged, and they call that a sclerotic plaque. Um, so that's not a good situation. So any of you out there who might become cardiopulmonary experts, take note. So, so if you have a plasma cholesterol exceeding 200 milligrams per deciliter, you have maybe too much cholesterol in your body at that time, especially in your bloodstream. It's synthesized in the liver, but it's also obtained from other foods, as we mentioned. So diets low in cholesterol and saturated fats can help in reducing serum cholesterol when sadly an individual has struggles here. Just getting an idea of what's the cholesterol content in food, liver, which is one of many people don't like it, including me, large eggs, lobsters, fried chicken, hamburger, chicken, fish, whole milk, butter, skim milk, and margarine. So it's not always beneficial to avoid cholesterol. Some of it is harmless, and we remain healthy eating these foods. But we do have to be cautious. Especially when you become a nurse, you're going to have to be concerned about your patient. So here's the cholesterol molecule. And so let's go ahead and define what this means. And so the carbon chain, we would say the carbon chain is right here at D. The hydroxyl group is here at the left-hand side, which is A. The steroid nucleus that you've been learning about is C. And the methyl groups we see here are at B, and there's another one here attached to the steroid nucleus. So it's a good idea. It's a good idea to have an idea. It's a good idea to have a picture of what cholesterol looks like. So bile salts, they're stored in they're synthesized in the liver, stored in the gallbladder. They're used to help us with digesting food and removing waste. They help in absorption of cholesterol, so they are necessary. Unfortunately, we can get cholesterol accumulating, and there can be bile salts that form. And remember, salts can form solids, right? Remember about ionic compounds. So these salts can get precipitated out, and then they become hardened and can cause pain and not very good at all for the gallbladder. and it can obstruct the bile duct, messing up people's ability to get rid of, to take care of their stomach and getting rid of waste. So that's not a good thing at all. It's right below our liver and right by the duodenum, which is part of the intestine, and then the pancreatus. So a very sensitive spot for us humans. So um, we learn about what they call cholic acid. This is the cholesterol molecule with another hydroxy group added onto it and a third hydroxy group. So those hydroxylating something always makes it more soluble, makes it easier to excrete, whether it's, or put in the urine. In this case, probably excreted. And then you could have amino acids attached to this alkyl chain through an amine group. This is an amide functionality. We learned about the carbonyl attached to a nitrogen, and then a carboxylic, a deprotonated carboxylic acid, because this is in base media. Bile salts are usually in base, so it's deprotonated and it's a carboxylate. Remember, and it can associate with cations. This amino acid is just one of the many amino acids, the 20 that you'll be studying for chapter 16. It's called glycine. So lipids are nonpolar. They typically are insoluble. They're not water soluble and form their own bilayer. But when we do things like hydroxylate cholesterol, we of course would change that. And this is a way to help transfer lipids. And so you got to imagine these lipids can be made somewhere in the body and then transported around the cell, or what have you, or even in the bloodstream. So this can get really sophisticated, and biochemistry helps explain this stuff. And lipoproteins help to transfer lipids. Of all things, we got this unique organelle called a chylomicron. This thing is, it's living, but it's like a big storage molecule. I don't think it has a nucleus or anything like most cells, but it's still really kind of controlled by the environment and cell signaling to even make this chylomicron. And what is it? It contains triacylglycerols, so like three fatty acids balled up into here. Cholesterol esters are mixed in here. So this can get transported to cell, kind of like a package you would receive from Amazon. Like if you're getting food sent from Whole Foods and you get packaged, food, butter, or what have you. This is kind of like a package that can get sent through the bloodstream to be transported to cells that need it. So this is a sophisticated, neat delivery system, kind of like Amazon dropping off you some things. So this can be soluble in water. It can float around, although it is lipids on the outside. You can see the membrane, the phospholipids, and the cholesterol in the membrane, and a membrane protein, and all these cool things. And then, lipoproteins, which make up this blue part. So this is very, very interesting. And they call this a lipoprotein because you have the lipids and you have a lipoprotein, which is sophisticated because it has all sorts of amino acids and it forms unique three-dimensional structure, where we know phospholipids and cholesterol are pretty simple in how they form. They're not huge proteins, as you can see with these blue pieces on this chylomicron. So moving on, we talk about chylomicrons, VLDL, LDL, HDL density. As you get to HDL, which is the highest density cholesterol, LDL considered the bad cholesterol at 1.06. And let me change my pointer. VLDL, we won't talk too much about that. And in chylomicron, we just saw that. And so you can see the percentage of triacylglycerols, 86% for this chylomicron. So it can deliver a lot of fatty acids, and some phospholipids, cholesterol, things like that. LDL has the most amount of cholesterol involved, and HDL has the least amount of cholesterol involved besides the chylomicrons, which makes it the good cholesterol. Remember that. Proteins can be associated with these as well. Lipoproteins differ in density, composition, and function. They include LDL and HDL. Lipoproteins are lipids mixed with proteins, perhaps attached to some of the lipids, phospholipids in the bilayer. So it gets a little bit sophisticated. And this is an introductory course to get your interest to see, plasma lipoproteins. Where are these found? The bloodstream. Why are they in the bloodstream? Because they're being delivered to cells that might be in need of a chylomicron or some of these LDLs and HDL. So there's a way to deliver these packages to cells in need. Cells can also make their own, um, phospholipids and things and such. Cholesterol, of course, is made by what do we say, the liver? So it has to deliver cholesterol to other cells. So that's why it's floating around the bloodstream and why it can be a problem in arteries. Again, this picture showing you the basis of how cholesterol has to be transferred from where it can be made in the liver, or you can get cholesterol from the food from your intestines as you digest food, and it goes out into the bloodstream as well. Maybe it gets packaged as a chylomicron. Um, but this steroid nucleus, back to that, really cool stuff. Look at just slight modifications. What can these slight modifications do? Remember when cholesterol is not acting as a damper to control the fluidity of the membrane, increasing or decreasing the fluidity of the membrane, you have where steroids can also be used as signaling molecules. They can cause the chemical messengers that communicate to the body to maybe make some changes in the genetics so it can produce certain proteins and cause sex hormones to be activated, and so certain proteins can be produced that produce sex traits. So we look at testosterone and we have a carbonyl group here and a double bond. We didn't see that previously. And we have a hydroxyl group here. That's testosterone, or called androgen, found in testes. We have estradiol, which is another name for estrogen, produced in ovaries. High in women, not so much in men. Same with testosterone, high in men, not so high in women, but both are sometimes present. Um, so you have, look at this for the estrogen molecule or estradiol, you have a benzene um, ring introduced. There's no benzene rings here. These are all alkanes or alkene, but here we have an aromatic benzene ring introduced, and that makes this part flat and controls this molecule so it can be attached to certain estrogen receptors. Just as testosterone would not bind to an estrogen receptor, estrogen would not bind to a testosterone receptor because of these different 3D shapes. Progesterone, another molecule produced in the ovaries. And then we have something that looks more like in the adrenal gland, this norepinephrine, synthetic progestin, which can do certain things, responsible maybe for adrenaline and other stuff. And it looks a little bit like progesterone, so it may have an effect on chemical messengers for sex hormones. So we have male and female sex hormones, testosterone and testosterone, and we have female sex hormones such as estrogen and progesterone. So all produced from that one molecule, cholesterol. And what does all these changes? What does all these changes? Enzymes do all these things to change cholesterol into one of these molecules. And there's more than just these four molecules coming from cholesterol. And now there's what they call adrenal corticosteroids, and they come from adrenal glands, and they are responsible for things like salt balance in the cell. And so they're not necessarily sex hormones at all. They're mineral corticoids, and they can change sodium, potassium, and chlorine, and all these other, and calcium ions that are floating around the body. And then you got glucocorticoids that regulate glucose level. So along with insulin. So these are human body's quite complicated. We should be in awe of ourselves and have respect for human life, certainly knowing how complex it can be. And so, anabolic steroids. So, just kind of note it's a derivative of testosterone. And so, we saw that with the carbonyl group and the double bond. But it can be altered. Some are synthetic and they can cause increases in speed and muscle mass and stuff that might be able to help us in sports or even further. And don't get me wrong, anabolic steroids are not always bad. They sometimes can be a lifesaver in healing people quickly and getting muscle tissue and things back up to speed. But long-term use of them can cause, you know, hair loss or hair growth, fluid retention, sleep disturbances, and worse yet, liver damage. Everybody knows Arnold Schwarzenegger, and many believe he believes himself that he probably took too many steroids and perhaps damaged his heart, and that he had to have all these valves replaced. And he blames himself for that, whether that's true or not. We know he won numerous gold medals in all sorts of competitions and was driven to be the best he could be in weightlifting. But there is some dangers of using anabolic steroids way too much. So we have what they call methadone, oxandrolone, nandrolone, and stanzolol, which is quite interesting. And we have this another ring added to the molecule, and a dinitrogen containing ring. And so there's really lots to be learned about steroids and cholesterol and what cholesterol can be turned into. And so um, these adrenocorticosteroids produced in the adrenal gland, we know adrenaline comes from that. It helps us get that extra kick to keep us moving. These reside by our kidneys. We have aldosterone, which helps regulate water and electrolyte balance between salt and water, which is very important because of osmosis. Remember osmosis? The kidneys definitely help with that. We have cortisone, which can increase blood glucose level. Cortisone. It can also sometimes decrease the immune system when we go into fight or flight. It's often called a stress hormone, at least that is with cortisol. And so you can see these adrenal corticosteroids, a little bit different than testosterone, but they all come from cholesterol. And we see cortisone produced in the adrenal gland. Aldosterone, a mineral corticoid, we know it must affect some of the salts like calcium and what have you, and sodium maybe, produced in adrenal glands. We have cortisol, it's produced in the adrenal cortex. We have prednisone, and this is a synthetic molecule. And so you can look up what that might do, how it might help the body. And so um, cortisone, for example, increases blood glucose level and stimulates synthesis of glycogen in liver because blood glucose is cortisone will fight or flight. You're gonna want a lot of energy, so glucose levels in the bloodstream are gonna go up to feed your cells because you're gonna have a lot of exercise you need to do because maybe you're being chased by a gigantic bear and that would be scary and your body starts kicking in cortisone, and hopefully none of you are ever chased by a bear. So identify each of the following as a fatty acid, a steroid, or a triglycerol molecule. And you guys have the talent now to do this. So when you see cholesterol, you should say, oh, that's kind of like a steroid. Stearic acid, oh, that's going to be like a fatty acid. Glycerol tristearate, okay, that's going to be a triacylglycerol. Estradiol, that's going to be like a steroid. And if it contains no fatty acid, that sounds like a steroid again, because we just looked at those altered cholesterol molecules that were responsible for glucocorticoids and sex hormones and adrenal hormones, adrenal. We look at cholesterol, steroid, stearic acid, fatty acid, glycerol tristearate is a triacylglycerol, and D and E are both steroids. So that should make sense to you. And that we come to an end of 15.6. You guys have been awesome. Keep up your learning. This has been GOBC Chem 114. I'll see you soon.